Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Now, the Mica Miller case is still evolving, and now it has gotten to the point where it seems that the parents of the people at the center of the case, that is Mica Miller, God rest her soul, and her husband, Pastor John Paul Miller, have now come into the case strongly to sort of place emphasis on what they believe actually happened. And as it stands now, the father of Mica Miller has come out to say some things. He granted an interview. I'll do a video on that. That was a very revealing interview. But then for this particular video, we are going to look at what the father of Pastor John Miller has come out to say. Bear in mind that John Miller, or John Paul Miller, is the son of a pastor. So Pastor J.P. Miller's father is also a pastor. He is called Reginald Miller. And he has come out to put out his 2 cents in a seeming defense for his son with regards to the self-induced unaliving of Mica Miller. Now, this is what Reginald Miller, the father of Pastor J.P. Miller, Mica Miller's husband, said about Mica Miller. The first thing he said was that Mica Miller was a very sick woman. Now, I'm just quoting what has been said. He said, now, I think that is a harsh statement to make. It does not necessarily mean it's false, but I think it's worth noting that it's harsh. Now, he actually wrote a lot in his 900-word statement, but I'm just going to pick some of the few things which I deem them as the key highlights of this 900-word statement put out by Reginald Miller, the father of Pastor John Paul Miller, who is the husband of the now deceased Mica Miller. So this is what Reginald Miller said. I'm quoting, "When all of this is over and they see in the second weeks of marriage, she went and got a GUN and was outside shooting up the neighborhood when my son ran out to stop her." Now, this is the first thing that I'm highlighting from his 900-word statement. So he's trying to give reasons why he came out straight out of the gate to say that Mica Miller was a very sick woman. He's trying to say that even in the first weeks of marriage, the second weeks of marriage actually, she actually got a GUN and she ran out into the neighborhood and was just putting shots up in the air. And then it was his son, Pastor J.P. Miller, who actually came out and stopped Mica Miller. If this is true, then I'm expecting it should be documented. And if it's documented, then it won't be difficult to prove that he's telling the truth. In which case, there could actually be a case for an actual history of mental issues with regards to Mica Miller, because her husband, Pastor J.P. Miller, actually said this when he broke the news of her passing to his church. But you see, his dad is saying the same thing here. And like I said, there should be medical records to confirm these things. You can't just tag somebody as having a mental issue and not have any medical records to back them up. Now, another highlight in Reginald Miller's 900-word statement reads, "Did you ever see any crying or upset in her voice in her 911 call? No, because she was in one of her psychotic states." This is also interesting, but I think it's worth mentioning that, first of all, Reginald Miller is not a medical practitioner. Neither is he specialized in any field that helps him determine who is in a psychotic state. So I'm sure this is his opinion, or maybe what he believes strongly, but I don't take this to be a medical opinion. But that is what he is saying. I listened to the 911 call. I've actually done a video analyzing it, and unfortunately, I'm not in a position to determine whether she was upset in her voice or not. Honestly, I'm not in that position. And whether she was in that point of being upset or whether there was any form of upset in her voice or not does not necessarily mean that it was because she was in a psychotic state. Granted, even if that she wasn't upset, it doesn't necessarily mean that she was in a psychotic state. There could be a myriad of reasons as to how come that she didn't show any signs of being upset when she made that 911 call. So I've said earlier, he is not a medical practitioner, neither is he an expert in diagnosing people experiencing psychotic states. Now, another point Reginald Miller puts out in support of his son, Pastor J.P. Miller, says that if Mica Miller's family would have let her the last time her doctor put her in a mental facility for a minimum of 3 weeks and had not checked her out and convinced her she did not need drugs, I believe she would be alive today, happy singing in church. So indirectly, I interpret this as Reginald Miller seems to be blaming the family of Mica Miller for not leaving her in the care of her doctor the last time he put her in a mental facility. You know, he's saying that if Mica Miller's family had left her the last time her doctor put her in a mental facility for a minimum of 3 weeks and had not checked her out and convinced her that she didn't need drugs, maybe she would have been alive today. So he's trying to say that they didn't allow Mica Miller to go through her medical process that she needed to bring her out of some of these mental issues. And then he goes on again to say in another point that John Paul Miller loved Mica Miller with all his heart. My son did everything he could to keep her on drugs, help her through her psychotic states. On one occasion, he had to call the police after she bloodied his nose and he refused to press charges. She told me just a couple of months ago that her family were mad because she was with John Paul, because she had told them things that weren't true. When they realized they were not true, they were all mad with her. Now, this is also an angle. I know that most of you watching this video and following this case probably are already angry with Pastor J.P. Miller. But let's try and put that emotion aside and pick our objectivity and common sense and come back to this analysis. Now, if you listen to, or if you read, or if you listen to what I read from the 900 word statement of Reginald Miller, the father of Pastor John Paul Miller, who is Mica Miller's husband, he's saying that there was a time Mica Miller actually bloodied the nose of Pastor John Paul Miller, but he didn't press charges. And then he's actually saying Mica Miller told him just a couple of months ago that her family were mad at her because she was with John Paul Miller, because Mica Miller had told her family things that were not true. And when her family realized they were not true, her family was mad with her. Now, it seems like this is going to be a pendulum case where it swings from one end to the left and another end to the right, where it seems like it's about to land on something only for it to swing off and seem like it's landing on something else again. Because per what Reginald Miller is saying, he seems to sort of be throwing some proportion of blame on the family of Mica Miller, even suggesting that they were mad at her because in her mental state she said some things that were not true, and when they realized, they were mad at her. But is that true in any case? Did she do that, or did all this happen? Was her family really mad at her? If so, I think these are all things that should be looked into, because in they being mad at her, what happened? Did they say some things to her that could have also driven her over the edge? I don't know. But if that is anything to go by, then it means that that angle should also be explored. But I think that is something that may be far-fetched. Maybe Mica Miller actually unalived herself. Maybe it was self-induced, but just that she had a messy life or a troubled life, depending on various things that could possibly maybe have included issues with her own family, issues with her marriage, her own mental issues, as well as several other things. An example is her at a point in time being the main suspect in an amount of 1,200 being stolen from a charity fund of the church. Maybe she was dealing with so many things that just overwhelmed her, and maybe she felt that was the way to go. I don't know. But the FBI is involved, so I'm choosing to believe that finality to this case will be coming soon. And some way, somehow, all these things that seem to be rearing their ugly heads and twisting the case from one direction to the other will settle, and the truth will be left standing. Subscribe if you are yet to do so. Hit the notification button, leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think? What do you think really happened to Mica Miller and caused her to do this to herself? Because it looks like her life was just so complicated. My heart goes out to her, her loved ones, and her family. R.I.P. Mica Miller. Let's get some justice for her if truly something was done to her that was wrong and pushed her over the limit. I'll catch you on the next one. Stay safe out there.